You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Haunted Histories, here, exclusively on Parasearch Radio, your paranormal radio station. How are we all? Now I know this isn't paranormal, but what on earth is going on with the weather at the moment? Can someone just sort of stop Mother Nature being... Well, it's almost like she's got more than one personality at the moment, isn't it? We seem to be going from winter to spring to summer to meant to be having another heat wave this weekend. Although, yeah, it is a bank holiday weekend, so that's probably a bit unusual. But, would she just make her mind up? As soon as I've got my shorts all washed and clean and ready to wear, I'm having to dig out the old winter coats again. Make your mind up, Mum. Anyway, did you know it's competition time again on Parasearch Radio? Well... this competition is a reading with our very own Claire Hinks, medium, who appears on Kerry Greenaway's show on a Sunday night. You should know the score by now. You've seen enough of the competitions that we run. You know what happens. Go over to the page, like the post, comment on the post, share the post. The winner's going to be drawn on May the 6th Spirit Dimension show. What have you got to lose? You could have a reading with a medium. Be pretty cool, wouldn't it? What else have I got to tell you? Oh, yes. Have you checked out our new YouTube channel? Well, if you haven't, go over there. Have a look. Don't forget to check out our new Parasearch webpage as well. Parasearchradio.com. You'll be seeing blogs and special features on both the YouTube and the website from all of us presenters. In fact, I've got a blog on there at the moment called History Rocks, and I'd love it if you went over there and told me what you think, whether you think history rocks or not. Although I'll warn you, I'm a history fan. If you tell me history sucks, you're off my Christmas card list. But if you tell me why you think history sucks, we can have an open conversation. Is that a deal? Good. So, tonight's show. What are we doing? Well, we're going to be talking to two of the guys from Fright Nights London about the only surviving manor house. I think that's Kerry who's just put good evening. She's logged in as Parasearch Radio. But if that is Kerry, hi Kerry, hi Richard. Anyway, we're going all Essex. We're going to Dagenham, darlings, Dagenham. Don't you know? Yeah, Valence House. You may think of Dagenham as being nothing but an overpopulated suburb of East London, but it does actually have a history of its own. Well before it became what you see today. I can't even get my words out today. This is very embarrassing. I am sorry. Hi, Kaz. Now, an essential skill, I believe, for a historian to have is an imagination. Hi, Gary. Thanks for joining us. You have to be able to put yourself back to where these events that you're looking into actually occurred and visualise what it would have been like. So I want us to go back to the Saxon era, marshes and wooden huts dotting the landscape, as Dagenham, or Decker's farmstead. Ham, actually in Saxon, means exactly that. It means small farmstead. So any place that you see has the word ham after it, it's a Saxon thing. It would have meant small farmstead, but it was known as Decker's farmstead, or Dacres, as it might have been pronounced. And it was then, back in the Saxon era, that it was first recorded through the records of Barking Abbey in 687 AD. However, it was so small back then that it wasn't actually mentioned in the Domesday Book of 1086, as Dagenham was then part of Barking. There you go. But it's been around that long. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Especially when you look at the size of the place now. It wasn't until about 850 years later that the building began in earnest and the first estate was erected in Dagenham, the Becontree or Becontree estate, which was actually built. I found this quite interesting, but then again I'm a bit of a nerd. It was actually built during the interwar years and designed as a place fit for returning World War I heroic soldiers to live. They put up 4,000 houses in the first year in 1921. See, we seem to think of these housing estates going up after World War II to sort of provide housing for people whose homes were destroyed in the Blitz and stuff, but no, it actually happened before that. The Housing Act that gave rise to it actually happened before that, and it was so that these soldiers didn't have to live in the slums of London. A bit more to it than that, but that was the basic sort of, I suppose, well, the basic description that you could say. Hi, Gemma. Of course I always have the fun factor. You'll get me laughing during the interview, I promise you. Anyway, but Dagenham has its own claims to fame. The late comedic actor, and I don't know if you knew this, Dudley Moore, actually grew up on that estate, the Becontree estate. Footballers Terry Venables and Alf Ramsey came from there, as did many others. And as I said, although we think of these new towns that were built, you know, your Milton Keynes, your Harlows, Stevenages and all of that kind of thing, would be designed after the Second World War to rehome those who, as I said, had been displaced by the Blitz. It was actually before that this whole kind of getting people out of the slums and getting them to the open air and getting them into nice housing actually started, which I think is quite interesting. So that's really what changed Dagenham from the rural farmland of Decker's farmstead and the marshes to the suburb that we see today. But where does Vallance House fit into all of this? Well, as with most farmland scenarios, there were manor houses who would have then had tenant farmers working their land. And the Dagenham area actually had 5 of these such manors. Vallance, sadly, is the only one that survives, but there are records of a house or some kind of occupancy sort of place to do occupancy, being on this site all the way back to around 1280 with one Robert Dynes. But it wasn't until the late 13th and early 14th century that Agnes de Valence, or Valence, and her brother Aymer, the Earl of Pembroke, moved into the premises, and the house then became Vallance House. I agree completely with you there, Gemma. I have the Monsters Inc. theory, that laughter produces more energy than fear. And a few people have nicked my theory, but you know, I'm getting the copyright done on it at some point, but I agree completely. Now, Agnes and Aymer had royal blood. Their half-uncle was actually Henry III. And Agnes, who was born around 1245, although nobody knows for sure, moved to Vallance around 1291. Problem with this time, you know, this period in history is nothing is really definite. Everything's circa or around. And it's not because I haven't done my research. Yeah. But she moved there after the death of her third. Yes, her third husband. Basically, a life of arranged marriages as a pawn for political and royal gain left her deciding that the single life was probably best. Can't really blame her, can you? 3 arranged marriages? Shit. Her brother Aymer also had royal connections and was actually one of those who arrested one Piers Gaveston. Remember him? Edward II's, shall we say in inverted commas, confidant? The one that the dukes and barons of the royal court felt was unduly influencing their king and had to be got rid of. I actually mention him in my blog, the one I did, History Rocks, the one you're all going to read, and let me know what you think if you haven't already, on the Parasearch Radio website. There's a hell of a lot of continuity in this history lark, I tell you. Well, Aymer was disgusted by the unfair and undue execution of Gaveston, because if you remember, some of the lords and the barons decided that he was definitely guilty of treason or something. But without him going through due process, they killed him. Well, Imus sort of didn't agree with this. He actually found it quite abhorrent, and he actually changed his allegiance to actually then support Edward II, rather than be against him any longer. He didn't seem to be the kind of bloodthirsty lord that you think of a lot of the medieval noblemen to have been. Now, the reason I am mentioning this family is, apart from the fact that they are, well, what gave the house its name, Agnes is also meant to be one of the resident spirits. She's said to have been murdered, dying in 1309, and the knife responsible having been discovered after being buried in the partial moat that surrounds the building for 600 years. Now, none of us know the truth. Nobody knows the truth. There's no record of a murder back then. And... oh, ha ha ha, Richard. Yeah. I can't... How do I use Roman numerals when I'm speaking? Cheeky. Sorry, in joke. But when you look at Agnes's records, she actually would have been around 64 years old when she died. Now, you look at the sort of 1200s, the early 1300s, in your 60s was a pretty darn good age to have got to. So who knows if she was murdered or not. Now, another amusing resident of the property, when it was being leased out whilst owned by the chapter of Windsor, was one Thomas Bonham. In 1635, this prosperous London merchant rented the Valence estate. His colourful and eccentric life caused quite a few local scandals, not least, and this one is quite funny, in a sick kind of way. He and his wife ended up in Colchester jail for refusing to pay the burial fee for one of his children, and also defaulting on his daughter Anne's £1,500 marriage settlement. When he died, however, in 1676, excuse me, the inscription on his tomb inside Dagenham Parish Church made it clear that modesty was not something he felt was, well, necessary. Listen to this. "Stay, wayfarer, lest you be ignorant who is buried here. It is worth your while to know that it is Thomas Bonham, Esquire, Lord of Valentia in Essex. He was an agreeable poet, and yet sublime, a shining ray of genius, an ornament of polite literature, and a happy model of elegance. He is ever to be praised, and can never, alas, be sufficiently lamented. The marble cannot contain his other virtues, nor indeed scarcely would the quarry itself from which it is hewn." He wrote that himself to go on his tomb. I gotta love him. It's almost actually surprising that he ended up being buried in Dagenham Church, as he had constant battles with the local minister for either not turning up to service or not paying his tithes, which was not allowed back then. The last family to live in Valence House were actually the May family. Now, they were there for over 40 years, from 1879 until there was a compulsory purchase order placed on the site by the council, and the building of the estate I mentioned earlier began following the First World War. Thomas May, the patriarch, was a farmer from Devon who pioneered commercial tomato cultivation, would you believe, and was also a prize breeder of Shire horses. Now, this is going to sound weird that I'm going to say this, that fortunately he died in May 1913. The reason I say fortunate is that it meant he didn't see his beloved equines get taken into service at the Western Front in 1914, when the cavalry was taking as many horses as they could. Also living there with them was his wife Helen's mother, Eliza Luxmore. Eliza was the widow of a Royal Navy captain, and she passed away only a few months after Thomas did, in the summer of 1913. Interesting fact is that Eliza is meant to still be in residence at her former home. There you go. Potted history. Shall we speak to the Fright Nights London guys and hear the interview that we did with them and see what they discovered there? Is Agnes still haunting the halls of her former home? Is Eliza still living there despite the fact she's been gone for over 100 years? And is Thomas Bonham still admiring his reflection in the mirror? Let's have a quick break and then we'll find out.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Okay, now you've heard me sort of talk a bit about the history of... you wouldn't believe we're actually doing a show on a place in Dagenham, I think, because most people would picture Dagenham as being, well, the Dagenham you see now. But, you know, try and cast your mind back to a few hundred years ago when Dagenham was very, very different. It was countryside, it was marshland, it was farms... And these sort of manor houses that we're going to be talking about, one is in particular, Valence, wasn't surrounded by sort of local authority homes and everything else. But we're going to be talking about it with some good friends of mine. We're actually talking with someone different from Fright Nights London tonight. We've got Steve. We've got Steve with us, but we've also got Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Oh. Hello.
Hello. We're breaking your radio virginity here.
Yeah, you certainly are. You're popping me cherry for me.
Once you pop, you never go back. Well, most of you, I mean, I've met Sarah a few times. She's lovely, she's great, she's got such a bubbly personality. It's amazing to be on an investigation with her. But most of you won't know her unless you've been on a Fright Nights London investigation. And I have to let you in on a little secret. She is Steve's sister. So There's a bit of nepotism going on here, a bit of keeping it in the family. But Sarah, how did you get into paranormal investigating?
Really, I suppose it is down to Stephen. We've always been really interested in it together, growing up, especially where he's sort of quite able talking to spirits and stuff.
Yeah.
I've been quite openly talking about it, and I decided to give it a go, ghost hunting, did a few investigations, and then when Stephen and Kerry started the Fright Nights London, they asked me to help out and be part of the team, and they're stuck with me now.
Now, have you ever taken a mickey out of your brother's abilities? I mean, you are siblings.
I think he's scared to.
You were scared to?
Oh, he knows too much, doesn't he? So I don't know what he does know. He won't tell me.
Well, having met one of your other sisters as well, I can't imagine the two of you didn't gang up on him at some point.
No, it's the other way around. He was the older one, so he always used to bully us.
Stephen! Stephen! So, where was your first ever investigation, Sarah?
I actually did it with Fright Nights. And it was in Worcester. It was the Armoury in the town centre.
Right.
That was quite interesting. That was actually with Ian Doherty.
Oh, I love Ian.
Yeah, lovely Ian. We do love him. But yeah, got insulted by him on the first ever ghost hunt, so that was nice.
That means he likes you. From what I understand, if he insults you the first time he meets you, that means he likes you.
Yeah.
Well, I think when I met him, it was at Kelvedon Hatch I met him. Do you remember, Steve, when he was the medium at Kelvedon Hatch when I met Matthew, and I was there, and he was quite rude to me most of the night, and when I said something, he goes, it's a term of endearment. So, yeah, if he's rude to you or whatever, it means he likes you. If he's nice to you, then you've got to be worried.
Yeah. Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that is my understanding of Ian. So, where has been your most memorable location to date?
It's quite a few, but the one that sticks with me, I'd probably have to say is Avenue House.
All right.
I've always had an unsettling feeling in the basement at Avenue House.
Right.
But for definite, I think we had a lot of physical stuff going on.
Right.
And a real sense of, I just felt very unnerved in there. You felt like something was going to happen, and then when it did, it was unnerving, but very interesting. You kind of walk out scratching your head and going, well, I know these things happen, but how does it happen?
Yeah. Cool.
So today, yeah, that's probably the most memorable, but there's been so many now.
Yeah.
So many EVPs we've caught of, especially the Rugby School EVP. That's probably one that really sticks out for me.
Yeah, which I'm going to be doing with you guys in June. I'm doing the Rugby School with you guys. I don't mean a radio show on the Rugby School. I mean I'm actually going to be there on the investigation.
You'll love it. You will.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to the thought of trying to park around there, though. So I might have to get some secrets on where to park.
Parking's lovely there. It's really easy.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You never have trouble.
Oh, okay. I just think London parking.
Yeah. But no, it's pretty good.
No, it's really good parking.
Oh, okay. I'll trust you, because it seems every time I park in London I get a ticket of some sort. So it's your fault if I get a ticket.
Well, we haven't so far, touch wood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, touch wood. Touch wood in earnest there, yeah. So
just
if
don't
you...
park anywhere near us.
Yeah, just park the other side of London to where we're parked, yeah. If you could investigate anywhere in the world, Sarah, any place, what would be your dream location?
I don't know. I haven't as yet done Warwick Castle, and that is one that I'd love to do.
Okay.
Leeds Castle, I think, is another one. If ever that opportunity come up, I'd love to do Leeds Castle.
Right. Anywhere, anywhere like that you would have to fly to?
It's a couple of prisons, maybe. Alcatraz would be interesting. I think Alcatraz would definitely... I think that's on a lot of people's bucket list, though.
It's on a lot of people's bucket list, yeah.
Yeah. Be a scary place.
It's not that scary inside it, I didn't think. I tell you what, I'd like to investigate the caves that are under Alcatraz, the original military prison. That's where I think the real shit goes down. I don't think the actual main prison bit. I think it's under there, and a few people I've spoken to who've got into the under bit, they've said yes, that's where things are lurking. But I found it quite peaceful there, if I'm honest.
Yeah. There's
I
so
think
many
you get
different sides,
mixed
isn't there?
reviews, doesn't it? When you hear from people about Alcatraz, it's just some people don't pick up on anything, and other people it's the worst place they've ever been. So.
Yeah. I do wonder though, the people who think it's a really bad place, they're thinking more about the kind of people who were there and assuming.
Yeah.
You know, when I think about what it would have been like to sort of have been separated from your family and everything, and I don't know if you've ever actually been there, but you can see San Francisco from the wreck area, and you can even hear it. And I think that would be quite cruel torture in that respect, knowing that life is going on literally just across this relatively small sort of thing of water, but you can't cross it. But then again, I genuinely didn't pick up on anything nefarious. I've spoken to a few people who've sort of got sensitive abilities, and they've said, no, didn't. Found it. It's quite sort of. It's scary. It's scary in a way because it's massive when you get inside it, but it's the under bit that I think is where was the original military prison from the 1700s. That's the bit I'd want to get into.
Yeah.
That bit I do think there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
But.
One day.
Yeah, one day.
Oh, it's definitely got to, just even as just a day visit. It's it's a fascinating place to go, but yeah, I don't know whether I'd want to. I'd want to investigate the underground bit of it, the original military cells. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
I think it's like any location you go to, though. You always find you're drawn to one particular area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I say you couldn't get to the military cells when I visited there sort of 16 years ago, something like that. but because they're deemed unsafe for the general public. But I do know someone whose friends or his uncle or something was one of the park rangers there, who let him into it to have a look, and he was the one that said he nearly sprinted out. It was so sort of dark, like ominous dark, not just torchlight needed dark. But yeah. Well, there you go. Fright Nights USA.
Yeah,
Yes.
you never know.
But back to Blighty, back to our county of Essex.
Yes.
And everyone was laughing at me when they were saying that Penny's going proper Essex this week. Even though Dagenham is kind of classed now as a suburb of London, isn't it, really? But it is Essex.
Yeah.
And most people wouldn't imagine a building as pretty as Valence to be, in effect, in the heart of Dagenham.
No, it's deceiving.
It is very deceiving, yeah.
So, is there like a really long drive up to it? Is there a park around it? Describe the approach to the house for me.
Well, there's it's in a park. You go through some big gates, drive to it. It has a moat round it, half a moat that goes around the building. So it's sort of separated from the park a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it has that feel when you go up the drive to it that it's
grand, isn't it?
It's grand. There's more to what you see.
Right.
And I think there's been a building on the land for quite a few years.
About 800.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's obviously the building's changed in size and stuff like that, but there is parts of the walls in the building that are original. Mm-hmm. They've been dated and they are original to the original building that was there.
Yeah.
So you sort of get some sort of feel when you walk in there that it has this, almost like, for me, being on a psychic level, it's got potential.
Yeah.
As you walk through those doors, you think there is more behind this than you actually see.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
So is it, as you walk in, is it kind of a timber framed, I can't even speak now, timber framed type building, or is it sort of almost kind of Georgian-esque with the sort of whitewashed?
Yeah, it's very much more, like you say, Georgian-esque. It's all white fronted.
Yeah.
Sash windows, isn't it, as well? You almost, I think the first impression I ever got of the building is when we walked up to the main entrance, was you can just imagine it in its heyday, with people coming into the house for gatherings and stuff. Yeah. You get more of that feeling on the first floor than the ground, I think, because the ground, obviously, it's been adapted for modern day, like a museum and stuff, but you do get more of the feeling as you go through the house of how it would have been, and it's really beautiful.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, when I started doing my sort of research, my history research for the show, there was originally 5 different manor houses in Dagenham. And a lot of them, well, all bar Valence were, well, they were in effect knocked down to make way for housing. Predominantly in the middle of the 2 wars, when they were starting to try and rehouse soldiers who were coming home from World War I, who were having to live in the slums. But there has been a property on that site for nearly, they believe, around 800 years, a farmstead or of some sort. And there's quite a few names associated with the place, some of which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. But where did you start your investigation? What part of the house did you start the investigation in?
Well, we actually started the investigation just outside of the house.
Right.
Where there's supposed to be people have seen a lady walking the grounds in distress.
Right.
Actually, we thought what we'd do, best place, because the hub is a building away from the building. we went out. We started the investigation as soon as we went outside the doors, before we even got to the house. So we investigated the land, then the house.
Right.
That was an eye-opening experience for on me on my psychic level.
And why is that?
Well, going round, just walking up to the house, I had this feeling of this lady in distress walking, but then she sort of stopped, facing like the what do you call it? I can't think of what it's called now. And like the water that's there,
Oh, the moat.
the
Yeah,
moat.
little moat.
She sort of stopped by the moat and sort of looked down in distress,
Right.
which I thought was really weird for me, because I mean, you do get spirits that are in distress and they replay, but she was definitely more ghost energy.
Right.
But then I saw her again walking up to her ghost energy. So I saw her twice. Mm-hmm. She's something I've not experienced. But this one, the lady that was standing with her was the same lady, but she was in spirit. So her spirit and ghost were in the same spot at the same time.
Right.
It's like she was trying to work out why she was seeing herself in distress.
So you had sort of like the I call it like the TV replay of her being in distress, but you also actually had her spirit watching the TV replay.
Yeah, watching her in distress, saying, "Why am I replaying this?" And she sort of turned and looked at me, saying, "Why am I seeing this?" I couldn't really explain why she was seeing herself, because I've never seen that on any investigations I've been to. So it was quite an eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah.
At that, and we hadn't even really started the investigation.
Can you describe what she looked like?
She was wearing a long white dress, with like a ribbon around her waist, tied at the back.
Right.
I would say almost like a corset, but I would say it's way before that, where it's strung down the back, but it's not a corset. It's part of the dress. And she had her hair in a bun. But her spirit and her ghost both looked identical, apart from the ghost form had blood, and it looked like it's from her back running down her dress.
So, did she give you an idea as to who she was?
She didn't give me any names, but she was just asking questions why she was seeing herself in so much distress, and she appeared to be holding something in her hands, something silver, so we assumed it was a knife, maybe, but not.
You do know the story of the knife and the moat and everything, I presume.
I do now. I've been told about it because there was a few people informing me that I was bang on the money. But
I mean, I touched on it in my first half, but Agnes de Valence was meant to have been murdered, and her knife, the knife that's meant they believe killed her, was found in the moat relatively recently.
Yeah. I was only aware of that after telling the group about this. Somebody turned around and said, well, yeah, there was supposedly a story about this. I did say thank you very much, and not to tell me any more information about the building before I went on into the investigation, because obviously I don't want that to taint anything I'm picking up, because obviously what I pick up is what I pick up. I don't want to know history of the building. Obviously Kerry, she does all the history, because Sarah's not really aware of the history of the buildings either. So it's nice for me to go into a building not knowing anything.
Yeah.
So if she makes her appearance again when we go there again, I'll be saying that I'm picking up energies I picked up last time, but I can't go into too much detail because now I know the history of that happening here, so I can't go any further, because otherwise that makes me sound like I'm a fake, and that's something I don't want.
But could you not use some of the knowledge? I mean, it's interesting that you mention this, because it kind of ties into the blog I wrote this week for Parasearch's webpage, which it's about well, it's called History Rocks, but it was about why I think actually knowing some of the history or knowing a reasonable amount of it can actually help rather than hinder. And one of our good friend Sarah Chumacero, who runs a blog page called Living Life as Full Spectrum, she posted one as well, but she actually, so hers was a bit longer than mine, but she actually said she understands why mediums and sensitives and that kind of thing don't want to know the history, because then it can validate when somebody else says, well, actually, as you've just said, someone then tells you, well, that does tie in. And I agreed with her. I only had 700 words to cover my bit in. I couldn't put everything in that I wanted, because my point was more that people will go into a building and automatically assume it's the A-lister who's haunting it, whereas it could actually be the A-lister's nephew. You get what I mean? It doesn't have people. So people go to, say, Warwick Castle and assume that the spirit they're seeing is Warwick the Kingmaker, Richard Neville. But it could actually be his manservant that you're seeing. It could be. It could be. There's one of the towers there that one of the previous owners was stabbed in by his manservant, and people say they report hearing someone's anguished screams. But if they read the history, they'll know the manservant actually killed himself straight after, and his master didn't actually die for a month. So the anguished screams could actually be the manservant because he's realised what he did. And that's where my sort of, when I say about history to people, it can actually help. But I do understand why someone who's doing a kind of a mediumistic, sensitive kind of approach to things doesn't want to know that, doesn't want the facts validated until after the event. But what I'm could you not use some of the facts you now know, if this spirit comes through to you again, to ask her slightly more targeted questions?
I could do, yes. So it'd be interesting to find out more about her. But obviously, sometimes spirit, most people go, oh, what was the date? When did she die? How old was she? What's her name? What's her full name? Do you know her occupation? Sometimes spirits just go, I'm in so much distress. I just want your help, and I don't really want to give you anything.
Yeah,
that is the frustrating thing for all psychic mediums out there, that they really sometimes they don't want to tell you anything. Yeah, and all you can do is describe what they look like, how you're feeling from them. Sometimes it's nice having some information, but for me, for the beginning, never actually doing a proper investigation there. It was great, sort of trying to explain what I'm seeing for the first time.
I understand. I do understand.
Then maybe pick away at it again, but sometimes that might be just a validation they actually want you to know. Yeah, they want you to know that they were there. And that's it. You might not ever pick up that person ever again.
Well, it surprised me if it is Agnes, because she is meant to be quite prolific. There, she is meant to be one of the more prolific hauntings, or so. So the research says. I mean, I tend not to research hauntings of places if I'm going to one. I'll research the history. Well, doing a show like this, it's hard for me not to know basic history pretty much anywhere, but I don't research the haunting stories or the ghost stories or whatever, the reports that people are giving me. I don't look into them. No. So that's where I like to go in blind. But I like to know the technical information so that I can ask questions or help to interpret the information that's coming through. But we're all slightly different. So that's a weird one. So a spirit and a residual at the same time.
Same time. I've not had that before, so it was quite interesting. But once again, the next thing I pick up on is not far from the doors before we even go in, and I saw a horse-drawn cart, 2 horses, and a white carriage coming up the drive and stopping.
Okay.
But then I saw straight away afterwards a black carriage drawn by exactly the same horses coming up and stopping in exactly the same spot. But it was the same carriage. So my first opinion is it is 100% the same carriage I'm seeing. Like one was the one they used a lot, and maybe when whoever passed away, the Lord, Mistress, or wherever of the family passed away, they went in the same carriage, but they just changed the colour of it. So they travelled through this carriage quite a few times, but when they passed away, they left on the same carriage, but they changed the entire colour of it. I don't know if there's any history of this, but
well, there is a history of horses there, because the last family who lived there, the patriarch of the family, was a very prolific Shire horse breeder.
All right.
And he actually established the society, the Essex Show Foal Society, or Foal Show, something like that. It's quite a big horse society in Essex. And yeah, he had a Thomas May. He had a couple of things he pioneered. He came from Devon, but he was a very prolific Shire horse breeder. And that doesn't really tie in with that, but I know that he died literally sort of 6 months before World War I broke out, and a lot of his very good shires were requisitioned for the front, and would never have come back. So, but even going back to Agnes's time, I don't know if they really used carriages that often in the 1300s.
But he's very strong, very strong.
Because it was after her sort of time, late 1400s, that the property started being leased out basically to people. It was leased out until the mid 1800s. So it could have been something to do with one of those families. But yeah, that's an interest. That's a
very interesting experience. It's great when I get new things that I haven't had before. It's fantastic. Yeah.
But the other thing as well is a lot of people report seeing Agnes walking around in the gardens.
Yeah.
But I do know that the house has changed a lot since her time. It could have been those were still buildings.
Yeah.
In her time.
Yes, it's possible.
Highly possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just outside. That's just outside the house.
We went into the through the front door, and we had a look around the first two rooms as you go either side of the hallway, and pretty much picked up nothing, which is quite nice.
Yeah, it was quite
just
quiet,
movement. I knew there was movement in the rooms, but there was no clear spiritual or entity or anything that really wanted to make itself known. It was sort of just movement. Like you knew that there was almost like a wash of movement through the room. You could almost like following a trail of somebody, just being just too far away to see who it was.
Right.
Which is good, because you can't go to an investigation and expect to see ghosts in every single room or spirits in every single room.
Would be nice.
It would be nice.
It would be great, wouldn't it?
I mean,
I mean, if you watch Ghost Adventures, that's what happens.
Oh yeah. They had a piano, and we did ask nicely if they could play the piano, and we heard nothing.
No.
Which is a shame, because it was a nice grand piano. So, so yeah, we carried on round the. I think it was the bottom floors.
Yeah, it was the ground floor, and sort of a museum of recent archaeology in the area.
Yeah. There was one section that we had this. This is the weirdest thing. It was like a dottery old deer walking around, and it was like a dottery old deer just walking around. She had like a blue rinse and slightly bent over slightly, and I would say she wasn't even that old of a spirit. I would say she was like 1970s, 1980s. You know, she wasn't even an old.
You might want to go back about an extra 60 years. You might have been seeing Eliza Luxmore.
Oh.
Well, you said that you felt like that she'd had a fall in the house.
She fell over in the house, but while it was a museum or something.
No, it was Eliza was Thomas May's mother-in-law, sorry, and she passed away in the house in around the summer of 1913, a couple of months after Thomas did, and she was a little old lady in her 80s. Yeah,
this lady that she's. I can't remember what she said her name was. She actually gave me a name, but I can't remember what it was. But she said that the reason why she was there was she wanted to make sure that the two young people that helped her up after she fell over, she wanted to say thank you, but she didn't know how to contact them. But the problem is, I think they may have tried to visit her after her little accident, but she passed away shortly after. I think it was due to falling. But yeah, she seemed quite a modern spirit. So
maybe it wasn't Eliza.
Blue rinse in her hair as well.
It was definitely a blue rinse as well. She had blue curly hair, and it's something you don't usually see on ghosts when you do paranormal investigations. Something quite new, spiritual. Especially when you're walking around in a knitted cardigan, you sort of, and like a brownie dress, you know that it's more of a modern-y kind of look to them. So yeah, that was quite interesting, and that was round a section that I didn't think I'd pick up anything. It seemed too modern.
Yeah, it was just part of the downstairs sort of hall leading to different rooms.
Yeah,
it was quite sort of different to just pick something up in the middle of the hallway, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Then we went into the whalebone room. I didn't pick up any whales. I don't know how to speak whale, so I didn't see anything like that.
You did pick up on a more modern gentleman, didn't you, that had passed in the archaeology area? Because he was wearing jeans.
He was jeans and a flowery top shirt.
Yeah, so he was very modern.
He must have been 60s, I would have thought. But yeah, he sort of just popped in, had a look around, and went, "Hi, I'm here," and then that was about it.
Right.
But it's in the modern area, so I don't even know if that section was even built there at the time. But it was.
But then it was all archaeology as well. So if he was to do with then, because you picked up on him. A certain job that he'd done as well. He was,
it was
like a professor or something.
Professor of
like that.
History of some sort.
So does that mean after I peg it, I can still go and visit museums?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
awesome. I won't have to pay to get in.
Yeah, exactly. Free entry.
Free entry. You can stand there as long as you like, and time doesn't go so. You can go there whenever you like. You can go in during the middle of the night and go in there during the day.
And do you know what the most awesome thing? Do you know what and I'm actually not taking the mickey here. I'm genuinely interested in what you're saying. But one of the most awesome things would be if I was a spirit, I might be able to communicate with other spirits, and there might be this oldie worldy stuff there that's got a spirit attached to it, and I'd actually be able to ask them genuinely what it was like.
Yeah,
that would be so cool.
Yeah,
it really would.
You have to then go find a medium and tell him exactly what went on.
Or her.
Yeah.
Or her. Him or her.
Exactly.
Might be a girly medium. But taking that back as next, sort of being a bit serious for a second, I guess one of the biggest issues you get with these kind of places, whether it be the Jeffrey Museum that we've obviously talked about before, whether it be Valence, because of the amount of artefacts that these places are bringing in, you never really know if anything in there is attached to the artefact or attached to the building. Or, as we were joking about before, is literally a paranormal hitchhiker who's sort of hitchhiked with something else. I thought, I like it here, I'm going to stay.
Yeah, exactly.
As a medium, can you tell? Can you tell if they're
something specific, or
if the building is the reason they're there, or if there's an item that they've got attached to, or if they're literally just like say, I don't know, a paranormal vagrant who's sort of passing through the system.
You can tell, and that actually brings me back to me to the next part of the investigation.
Really? Oh, that's uncanny.
The staircase that leads up to the second floor by the main entrance. There is an energy there that feels like it's running down the stairs, and you could always feel a draft there. No matter if the doors are all shut and the windows are shut, there's a draft that comes flying down that staircase.
Right.
It is something. If you're open to sensitive, if you're sensitive and you're open to energies, the first thing you do as soon as you put your foot on the first step of them stairs is you feel the energy come running towards you. It's so quick. And we went up to the second floor through these staircases, and I said, this is the lady's energy. And she comes from the second step down of the staircase. She just appears running down the stairs, and as she gets to the second step, the last step of the staircase, you hear a clicking sound, and she looks up, and then she starts again. She starts from the top of the staircase, and she runs back down the staircase, gets to the bottom step, you hear a click, and then she goes back to the top of the staircase. And that's the energy you get. And describing it was really interesting because it felt like it was ghost energy replaying over and over again. But the longer I was in the energy, I realised that she was spirit imitating ghost.
Right.
She played the energy over and over and over again. But as soon as I looked at her, I noticed that she made eye contact and she stopped right in the middle of the staircase. She was 100% not part of that building whatsoever. She's attached to them staircase and she can't leave them. She's part of a different house completely. And Kerry has done some research on this, and apparently the staircase is part of an old manor, and it wasn't even there. It's been moved and put into that building.
Yeah, it was come from another house, this staircase. It's very well built. It goes like in a loop, sort of. You go up a set staircase, turn the corner, up another set, turn the corner and up another set. And yeah, Kerry showed us and managed to find out that the staircase was actually brought in from East Hall, which was demolished in the 1600s. So it's definitely confirmed what Stephen had picked up on, that it was from another building.
Yeah.
So it was nice to validate something.
Yeah.
But obviously distressing to hear the torment that spirit is constantly going through.
Yeah.
Of everyone within the group, you could hear everyone just sort of sighing in, heartache for her. Because it was like she was trapped.
She can't go up and she can't go down.
No, she was just in this constant loop.
It's almost like she ran out of the house, but she disappeared from the house that we were in and appeared on the grounds of somewhere else and ran out. So it's almost like she appears in a house that isn't there, in a different place, and then she appears at the staircase at the top, bar one. So it's almost like they've put another step in. She starts one step, just one step down onto the staircase, and the step before last, she disappears. She's definitely spirit. She's definitely there, and she wanted to communicate.
She did.
And she did.
Really did.
We had several groups do different investigations there. We had a hit on the spirit box. We had a hit on Ovulus.
And glass divination.
Glass divination was getting responses, and it all responded very well when we were there. It was the spirit box, the Ovulus, and another device that we had all said
K2s as well.
Yeah, the K2s, and we had the same name come through, and it said Jenny. and it said Jenny on all of them.
And the spirit box, we'd
Which
ask,
we
what was your
recorded.
name? Yeah, which is recorded. We'd ask, obviously, what's your name? And then you hear Jenny come through.
Jenny.
Of this lady, and it's a lady's voice,
And
as clear as anything.
And it's definitely EVP we've
Yeah.
caught on that. It's as clear as anything.
That's really interesting.
And we had...
And that's what come up on the Ovilus as well.
We had K2s,
The
we
K2s.
had the REM pod,
REM pod
and
was
they
working
all
well.
were going off.
There's so many bits of equipment that were used in this one area, but they all coincided and synced with one another.
And where is
Yeah.
this
So where
area
was
again,
the
remind me?
This was the
Staircase.
staircase.
The staircase.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people on the top of the staircase were getting K2 hits, then it would stop, then the people in the middle would get K2 hits and it would stop, and then the people at the bottom would get K2 hits and it would stop. So it was almost like somebody running down the stairs. It was so much.
It was definitely the most
Cool.
active area,
Most
I think, of the
active.
night that we had there, which was interesting because you don't tend to really get that around staircases.
Now,
Too
well
much.
travelled, but
Yeah.
the amount of energy we had on that staircase from
Yeah.
one spirit was fantastic. Fantastic energy.
So when are you going back?
Well, that is the question. We are going back September.
8th of September.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to it. I want
So
to
I think
see.
the interesting thing about Valence is it's not investigated that often, is it?
No.
No, it's not. And we had the opportunity to do our first investigation there, and they said, "Well, we want you to come back if you're interested." So we went, "Yeah, well, come back."
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, well, it's always nice when a venue invites you back, especially one that doesn't have, ghost investigate or paranormal investigations on every week of the year, because it means it shows that you've done a good job and they can trust you
Yeah.
in their premises, which,
Yeah.
I can understand why some venues are reluctant to do it, because, when you do look at the stuff that they've got there, and the age of some of these places and the historical relevance of some of these places, it wouldn't take much for them to be damaged.
No.
And then it would be ruined for everyone else. So, which
exactly.
has happened. So, yeah, okay.
I mean, we did have we also had the opportunity to do the loft area as well.
Yeah, and that was
And
interesting.
we had a lot of glass divination. Set recordings, picked up nothing, but you knew there was somebody else additionally in the room. And we set up some triggers like K2s in the door, and they would come on and go off if you asked questions, which was quite interesting. So we went to a second part of the loft, and I had a feeling of a man, and he would hide in the distance and then come towards you really quickly to panic you, to scare you. We thought it was so interesting. After we did our 3 groups in that area, we decided to set an EVP session off up there while we went off into the rest of the house, and we set a recorder up and let it record. At the end of our evening, we actually went back up to go get the recording. I stopped the recording. Absolutely nothing seemed to be up there. It went quiet completely. So we came back down. We went to go over our information and all our recordings, and the information on the data stick was actually corrupted. There was no video recorded whatsoever, and I turned that off, and it was still recording. We also had other recordings on the device, and they all played, but this one recording of us on this lock off corrupted, could not play the record, could not play it at all.
Strange.
Very strange. So whatever happened up there is still a mystery, but something went on up there.
There's definitely something up there.
Yeah.
No shadow of a doubt there's something up there, but obviously for whatever reason that just wouldn't record. It wouldn't keep.
It corrupted.
Yeah, it just corrupted.
And we can't explain it.
See if it happens again in September.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's more interesting. We might actually set several recordings on up there and see if they all get corrupted. Because if they all do, then that's even better.
Have you gone over it with like an EMF reader to check there's no sort of spiking electrical?
There's nothing. It's just a plain recorder that has nothing like that happening to it. We've double checked it. We've recorded on other investigations, and it's recorded fine.
Perhaps get hold of almost like an old style cassette type recorder.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. We might go back
almost
to,
go old school. And see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, digital is great, but I mean, I have to admit, sometimes old school is best.
There really is. There was with one of my Parasearch colleagues, Sean Cadman, did a show recently with Michael Postlethwaite about this, and they were saying that more and more investigators are going old school. They are using like the old style. It's not digital recorders, but the old style recorders used to use that have the little cassette tape in.
Yeah.
Because it's actually harder to fabricate evidence. You can manipulate stuff digitally, but it's not so easy to manipulate analog. And I can actually see the logic behind it. I can, because and say if you've got a digital one going, or something that obviously needs digital, and then have something that's analog, if they both get wrecked of some sort, that would be quite, regardless of the fact you got the public there, but for your own personal experiment, I think I'd be interested in doing that and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, we may actually do that. We've been talking about getting some more old school versions of equipment and stuff. So we're going to start doing. Not only we're going to do new equipment, we're going to do old equipment.
It's just nice to give everyone the experience of different types of equipment that is out there, and that you wouldn't even necessarily think about using.
Yeah.
And explaining why you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Sort of a contrast to one experiment. If both get corrupted, there's something weird going on. If only one does, there could be some kind of magnetic something that's general. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else have you guys got coming up? Aside from Valence,
got a few events coming out. We have got Fort Halstead on the 19th of May.
Yeah.
We've got the Ragged School on the 23rd.
Yeah.
Of June.
Yeah.
Obviously, we got Valence House in September.
Yeah.
And we've also got a nice one for us. It's called the Bell Pub in London. We've got that on the 29th of September.
And what's the relevance of the Bell Pub?
Well, it is supposedly one of the locations that Jack the Ripper actually went to himself, and one of the ladies that was murdered, one of his victims, actually drank in the pub.
Then was it the night before she was the night she died?
The night she died.
Edwards.
Eddowes.
Yeah. Eddowes, sorry. Yeah, she drank in the pub the night she died, and the 29th will be 130 years to the day since her death.
And obviously we've got it past the witching hour, so it would actually lead up to when she passed away, when she was murdered, which is only about 2 or 3 roads away.
Yeah.
Where they found her body. So it is a very, very, very interesting one.
Certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, the East End of London, even if you forget about Jack the Ripper, I bet the stuff's gone down in that pub at some point in time.
Oh, yes, definitely. So not only are we going to try and find out if the legendary man is there himself, and obviously his victim, or victims, because we don't know exactly how many, we only know what's been documented, and other spirits that could be there, and see if they're willing to talk to us.
The pub's been there for a heck of a lot of years, so like you say, there's that area alone is going to hold a a good lot of history.
There should be a lot of energy going on.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Awesome.
Okay, well, thank you ever so much. Oh, I can hear myself all of a sudden. Thank you. Thank you ever so much, guys, for being our guests on the show tonight. Valence, it does sound like one that's deceptively active from what you're saying. So I'll be interested to hear, any further experiments you conduct once you've been there in September. Obviously, anyone who's interested in any of the events, is interested in the pub the guys were talking about they're doing at the end of September, or wants to go to Valence with the guys in the beginning of September, just head on over to Fright Nights London's Facebook page, give it a follow and a like and all that kind of thing, and you'll get access to all the events they've got, and you can book them up. And they're a really lovely crew to go and work with, and they've loads of really great positive energy that they bring with you. And scarily enough, they have smiles on their faces most of the time, which I don't know how they do it. I genuinely don't know how they do it. I tell you what, Sarah is one of the happiest people I think I've ever met, and I genuinely don't know how she does it. But yeah, go and give them a follow, go and give them a like, go and have a chat with them about the events they've got coming up. They're well worth it, because they do try and get places that other groups aren't necessarily going to, and they're London. If you're in the London Essex area, that's where their events are, so you don't have to do the 4-hour drive if you don't want to. So thanks again, guys. Really appreciate your time tonight. It's been really interesting interview. I'm still thinking about some of the stuff you said, the staircase and the spirit and the ghost together. That's kind of, I'm trying to process that. I'm sure we'll be hearing from the guys at Fright Nights London again at some point in the future. But if there are any other guests you think we should get on the show, do let me know, and I will get in touch with them and see what they say. But all that leaves me to say is Parasearch Radio, 6 nights of the week. We've got a new YouTube channel, which you're going to go and subscribe to, because I've asked you to nicely. And we've got our Facebook page and all the other things, and all the shows are stored for you to listen to as and when you want to listen to them. But really, it's time for my bed now, so good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.